Morning, good day, everyone. Thank you for joining this session, the first of a series hosted by Tandanet, APC, and Rhizomatica, exploring knowledge resources that CNs or community networks can leverage towards greater sustainability, impact, and reach. I would like to start with a few house rules and agenda, but maybe just check with Rispa. Are you able to share the first slide? In the meantime, just briefly to introduce myself, my name is Sol Lucaretena. I have been involved in the community networks environment in Africa and South Africa for many years, and I'm very glad to be back here to moderate this session. And I'm joined by representatives from community networks in South Africa, Nigeria, and Kenya. Welcome again. And Rispa, are you able to share your screen?
Yes, just give me a minute doing that.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. Can you see my screen?
Not yet, but no worries. When it's ready, we'll be ready. So again, just to give a framework as people are joining, this is the first of a series of 4 webinars hosted by Tandanet, APC, and Rhizomatica, African Community Networks Exchange on knowledge resources. And today we will be focusing specifically on navigating capacity building for community networks in Africa, challenges and best practices. Very briefly, we will go into just a welcoming, setting the scene, introduction from the different panelists. Very excited to have this diversity of community networks representing different countries in Africa. And then a look forward into what is next and growing the movement, followed by a more formal Q&A session. What we want to say is that we want to make this as interactive as possible. So please, if you have a question, you're welcome to raise your hand with the raise hand function, or type your question in the chat, and we will try and get to them as interactively as possible. A few house rules. Please respect APC's rules of a caring space. So it's in a sense, I will share, or Rispa and I will share what the full idea is, but in essence, it's about being aware of others in the room and making sure that we collectively create a safe space that's productive and creative. If you're not talking, please keep your camera off and microphone as well. As I mentioned, we want to make this as interactive as possible. And the session is being recorded and will be shared with participants after the session. So without further ado, I want to invite our panelists to take the floor. As I mentioned, we have 3 different community networks from 3 different countries. We have Zenzeleni Networks representing community networks in South Africa, Sitad from Nigeria, and Tandanet from Kenya. And I would like to invite, maybe to start in that order, our colleagues from Zenzeleni. I think there's Yumna Pandey and Nicholas Eppel, and maybe joined also by Neo Magoro. Just to briefly give us an overview of the organization and your history when it was established, and then the role specifically around the training that you have been doing. And while you get ready, I want to maybe focus on a little bit more on why these 3 community networks. They were part of the LockNet project, a project run or coordinated by APC and Rhizomatica in collaboration with the UK's Digital Access Programme, focused on developing their own context-based training initiatives. So with that, I would like to give it over to our colleagues from Zenzeleni. Thank you. You have 3 minutes to present yourselves and your program briefly. Thanks.
Hi, thank you. Hi, Bob. Okay, so brief background. So actually knows more than me, but I'm gonna just say this. So we started off in 2012 as a research project with Dr. Carlos Rey Moreno, at the time UWC PhD student, and basically, you know, from there on to where we are now, we started two cooperatives. And sorry, I'm just fast tracking because I think a lot of history about Zenzeleni is quite known out there. And then, so we started two cooperatives, and we basically ran our network in the areas of Mankosi, Zitulele, and 2 or 3 new villages in the area within a 40-kilometer radius: Kanzibe, Mchilini, and Nongba, as we've expanded. In terms of our in terms of the School of Community Networks, actually it was through Sol that we got onto School of Community Networks. It was a year-long program, and our training was basically focused on obviously just teaching students, several communities, including our own, including Zenzeleni, on basically how to manage a community network, from tech to business to personal development to social development. And I'm going to stop there and ask my colleague Nick to continue on. Thank you.
Hi, Roy. Can you hear me? Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Yumna. So the program, I think, started in 2000. Yeah, the end of 2021, beginning of 2022, I think it was. So there was a sort of a 6 months of design going into the program, and our program ran, as Yumna said, for a year, with 21 participants initially, of which the gender breakdown I think it was 11 males and 9 females, or 12 males and 9 females, I think, was our initial breakdown. And I think what we'll speak about later is the kind of the design aspect of it. But I think it was the first time that we had ever tried such a large training program as this. There had been some smaller training programs and mentorships that the organization had taken on before, a year or two before, but this was the first time of the scope and magnitude. And I'll be interested to hear from others, but also speak with you all later and kind of get into the more finer points of the training and the outcomes and resources, etc.
Thank you, Yumna and Nick. And I would like to call up Harira Wakili from CITAD to please just introduce their organization and their program. Thank you. Harira, are you with us? There seems to be a problem, maybe connectivity. Maybe Rispa, you can go ahead and share your presentation from Tandanet, and we can circle back to Harira. Rispa?
Yes, thank you, Sol. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Rispa Aros, and I work for Tanda Community Network as a partnership and strategy lead. I'll share my screen. Yeah. So I'm so glad to be part of today's discussion. Just to give a brief on our organization, Tanda Community Network. We are based in the informal settlements of Kenya, in Kibera, and our focus is on establishing for, by, and with the community a digital ecosystem that actively addresses digital inequalities within marginalized grassroots communities. And how we do this is we recognize the importance of the community-driven approach, and we have 3 C's that we look into. That is connectivity, co-creation, and convening. That is more toward, that's the principle that guides our mission in fostering grassroots-driven development through connectivity. I'll just give a brief around the 3 C's. In terms of connectivity, we provide.
But actually, what kuna suggestions pia.
Thank you. Yes, so the first, under connectivity, we provide affordable internet access. And here we have 85 nodes covering community schools, community hospital, community businesses, and activist groups that we've connected throughout Kibera. And then we also provide storage and hosting services where we support community initiatives that would want to post their services in our servers. And currently we are working with in partnership with DW in hosting a local instance of Colmena platform that will support local media in producing and publishing local content. And then the other C is on co-creation. Here we engage the community in understanding their different needs and co-creating with them initiative that will either build their capacities in terms of skills or build awareness around a certain issue. So we have Mtandao Mtaani, which is our network training, where we train communities in basic network network provision services. Also, we have Creative Accelerator program that looks into engaging young people, especially creatives, in understanding their work and how it can be amplified in the online space. And then lastly, we work also in the areas of supporting grassroots women human rights defenders in amplifying their work through engaging them to understand digital advocacy, as well as having discussions, having awareness raising around issues such as cyber threats, as well as online gender-based violence. And then the last C is around convening, which I think is mostly the part of will have the part a major part of our discussion today. And in our convening effort, we do Mtandao Mashinani, which is supporting emerging community networks in ensuring that they understand what it means to design, what it means to deploy, what it means to operate and sustain a community network. We also have the Kenya National School of Community Network, which invite different stakeholders in the digital ecosystem to discuss how best we could support and grow the community network movement in Kenya. And then lastly is on the techno-feasibility and institutional strengthening that looks at now the hands-on practical support that we give for the different community networks that have gone or undergone our training trainings, so what kind of support they need on ground. So I'll stop there, and I'll give it back to Sol. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rispa. I see that we've been rejoined again by Harira. Harira Wakili from CETAD in Nigeria. Are you ready to present from your part? It's a 3-minute presentation. If you missed this, on your organization, when it was founded, the mission, and how your role in the training program. Harira?
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Welcome.
Hello?
Hello, we can hear you.
Thank you. Okay, I am trying to... Okay.
Welcome. Would you like to...
Good
Yes,
afternoon,
go ahead
everyone.
with your
My name is-
presentation. Yes.
Trying to share a picture. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Harira Wakili, and I work with Center for Information Technology and Development, CITAD, here in Nigeria. So CITAD is an ICT-based organization working towards bridging gender digital marginalization, working in the area, also working in the area of accountability and transparency in sectors like in education, and other parts of working in the yes, as well as working in the area of ensuring community are being connected, creating awareness to communities, most especially rural communities that has less access to digital technology, as well as training individuals on digital rights and freedom of expression. So CITAD has begun its community network project in 2021, and we have started with 7 micro organizations in 7 different communities across Nigeria. 4 communities from Abuja, part of Abuja, which is the FCT, and 1 community in Kaduna, 2 communities in rural part of Bauchi State, which is the northeastern part of the country. So we begin the first School of Community Network in the year 2022, where we train a few individuals from the micro organizations, which are directly working in the project. And the second year, we try to expand the knowledge by inviting people from the communities that we are working with to apply for the school and participate in the school. So you can see from the first to the second school, we have different people that attended the school, and we were able to expand the knowledge of the school. Both the 2 schools are funded by APC because it's during the project, when the project is on, that we hold the schools, and we're able to take care of all the logistics of the school, of the participants during those schools. So as the project is ending, we started thinking about sustainability issue, how we can, at CITAD level, how we can sustain the school, how we can make it, how we can be able to make it happen every year. So the CITAD School of Community Networks was kind of support by the individuals that participated in the school. So parts of individuals that participated in the school. So the CITAD School of Community Network, we faced a call for application, and people from individuals from the micros were able to apply, and we clearly stated that the school will be funding, like participants will be funding their own participation in the school. And fortunately, we were able to have high number of people that applied and willing to fund themselves to the school, which is a very good success story for us, because we were able to have people committed to the school without us being supporting them. The only support that we do is we give them lunch and tea break during the school, and they take care of their dinner and their accommodation. So we also have two two participants that come from a very far place amongst the 7 micro organizations that we're working with. So just to motivate them, we take care of their accommodation, because they spend a lot of money to be in Kano to attend the school. So basically, this is the success story we have for the School of Community Network, and we are already in the plan for the 2020. We are already in a planning stage for the 2024 School of Community Network, which is going to happen in the next few months. And we are going to use the same approach, because that is an approach we are very proud of, and it works. So currently, some of the team are in Abuja for the Hello World CTAD APC collaboration. A hub is building a hub is undergoing in Abuja, and a 3-day training. Today they will be done with the 3-day training, and the process of building the hub is still ongoing. So this is another thing that we are really happy to share with you all. Thank you. If you have any question, you can ask me. Thank you.
Thank you, Harida. And that's a great introduction for the next question that I'd want to pose to all panelists, which is, and well, before we go to the next question, I would encourage our panelists from Zenzeleni, Tandanet, and CTAD to maybe share your website or any information that you have about what you've just shared on the chat for as a resource for people joining us today. And so the next question we have is really about, how did you go about the planning of the training program? We know that community networks are focused on answering specific needs to their communities and being very sensitive to the contexts in which they operate. Really as a complementary model to bigger internet service providers. And so with that in mind, I hear also Harida mentioned that in some cases, some of the participants were self-funded, others were subsidized. I want to turn first to Tandanet, to RISPA, to just speak a little bit about the key elements in planning your training program. Highlights really about what you think worked particularly well or was particularly challenging. And maybe we can try and keep it to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Sol. Yes, with regards to the Kenyan, the planning of the training and mentorship, maybe just to mention that the first time we rolled out this program was I can say was the hardest, because at that time we did not know many community networks or anyone who was interested to start a community network. So in planning was to think through how we will get the participants for the trading. And while doing this, we did a needs assessment to organizations that were already working in the digital ecosystems ecosystem, or that were just interested in starting a connectivity solution for their community. And with that, we mapped out four that we had started with, and later on we got to 7, and to even last school we had 12. And what has helped in the planning phase was the element of introducing first, I would say, was developing trust with the different organizations that we had mapped out, and trust in terms of first understanding what is their needs, because also organizations don't just want to be involved into a training without really understanding what is their current needs. So we did a need assessment to just understand the organization, what they're doing, what their values are. And with that, it had already started to build trust in the training and mentorship program. And then we we formed an advisory committee that really helped in curating the school and curating the model around the school, because then it had heads or the founders of these different organizations bringing on their community development, some their technological expertise, to brainstorm what would make sense for community network school. And with this in mind also, to just mention that this was very informal. So we wanted the school to be something that will cater for the different levels that all the organizations were in terms of knowledge of community networks, and also in terms of deployment. So taking the planning phase really serious in terms of understanding what is the need and what is the expertise that can be provided just within the organizations that are interested, to start one. And then lastly, understanding what other expertise do we need to get from the digital ecosystem, and who can we ask and who can we partner with in the training.
Thank you, Rispa. Very interesting, your approach of looking to do this through organizations that already understand the needs of different communities. And it really speaks to some partnerships between different skills and knowledge systems, right? I want to invite our colleagues from Zenzeleni to just comment on the same. What went into the planning elements? Also curious to know whether they coincided with some of the ones shared by Harida and Rispa, or whether they were different. Thank you.
So, thank you, Sol. I just want to give some context as to where we were at before, or the stats of where we were at before the school started. So in South Africa, basically, and I'm sure in many of the networks around the world, it was about bridging the digital divide in the country, where the geographic divide mirrors the digital divide. And with South Africa having like the highest unemployment rate in the world, country sitting at 34%, stats like gender-based violence rate currently sitting at 50%, and our country's data costs are like amongst the highest in the world. And as part of our quest of the community network school, our community network is to bring quality and affordable connectivity to the people in our communities, and access to information. Particularly with the School of Community Networks, our aim was improving the livelihoods of the participants, and we will get into that, and that of those in the communities by obviously just equipping these participants with skills to be able to operate and manage and maintain their own community networks. I'm going to hand it over to Nick in terms of the training processes and or the pre-project rollout.
All right, thanks, Jimna. So what was interesting was much of our process mapped the same as RISPA. Yeah, I think in the way that we thought through the design, the establishment of an AC, the committee of experts or practitioners who were then helping. We used to meet regularly. We would all help brainstorm and go through certain agenda points, thinking through how to grow a community network movement in the country and what kind of trainings would be applicable and what kind of needs there were. The advisory committee from our side was comprised of the existing community networks, but also some organizations who had shown interest in them. from before. And what was interesting, I think, from our side was, as Rispa mentioned too, there was this need to sort of make the entry requirements as kind of open as possible, right? So it wasn't exclusionary. And that meant that we had people stepping on who had, I don't know, say 15 years of technological skills, and we had others who hadn't used a computer before. And so we had this broad range of experience, and kind of a broad range of people coming from different structures, people coming from established NGOs with money, grant funding that's coming in, and other people from structures which either hadn't yet been formed or which were really just being kind of upheld with their own money being put into it. So I think the extent to which we made this sort of an open invitation for communities to join, I think it was an amazing experience. What it did was it showed us the extent to which the challenges exist on the ground, but then also the idea of pooling knowledge and bringing people together to kind of to grow together was an important piece of the puzzle. I think in terms of the design phase, what we did as an advisory committee, we all sat and we thought through different things, like what should the profile of the students be, what should the profile of the trainers be, and we went through that. One of the, I think, innovations we had was that the people who wrote the training material were also the people who did the training themselves, right? So we had people design the material and then also teach the material. But we also had an interesting combination where some of the students were also the teachers, because they were people who'd been more experienced, had been in the CN world longer. So we created sort of like fluid movement of experience from the initial design stage until all the way up until the end. And I think in many ways there was a strength, but it also comes with challenges, and I think it's useful to be honest about that. The challenges of such discrepancies mean that you have people who might feel like they don't know enough, and therefore effort needs to be put into being able to make other people feel that they know enough and they are okay, and there is confidence to learn amongst a cohort that's so mixed. Our cohort I mentioned earlier was comprised of 21 students. I think that was standard throughout all the schools. And I think we had 2 dropouts maybe by the end after a year. So we only ran the one program, unlike other schools that have done few iterations, which their time I think is much shorter. I'm not exactly sure of the timings of this, but ours was a full year. And what that comprised of was training from about January through to May, and then a mentorship process that stretched from May until December, January. And then we can get into more of the sort of the training after this piece. Thanks, all.
Thanks, Yumna and Nick. I hear from you the sense of the different challenges from different countries, right? You mentioned the high cost of connectivity in South Africa specifically. Also, perhaps as a different approach where TandaNet looked at collaborating with organizations already active in spaces, you approached individuals. And the challenges that there was a huge range of different applicants and individuals, from ones that had very keen ICT sort of skills and savviness, and others that were quite new to that and the material of community networks in general. And what really strikes me is this participatory development of material in both cases, and also the learner-centeredness, right? Before I go into the next question, which is more about what the training actually looked like, the training journey, I just want to give Harida another chance to just comment at all of anything about the planning phase specifically, and how it might have been different or similar to the experiences shared by our colleagues in Kenya and South Africa. Harida,
thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. So during the first call, during the planning, we try as much as we can to see that we have contact or participants from the micro organizations that we are working directly with, participants from the micros that are working directly in the project within their community. So after the first school, we had a knowledge sharing meetings with other CN peers. So we begin to learn that it is okay. We can begin to learn that yes, we can adopt the habit of let's say doing a call for application from members of the communities to come in and participate, the like-minded members to come in and participate. And that's one thing that we learned from Kenya, from South Africa, because during the learning sharing meetings, learning sharing sessions, we learned that this is the approach they use and it really works for them. So we try to use the approach which really worked for us, and we have members that are willing to support the community network project in their community who are not in the initial in the initial plan when we started the activity. And this is how the knowledge keep on, the skills keep on expanding, and this is how we begin to have more people who are willing and who are supporting the community network project across the several micro organizations. Another thing is we learn from we learned so much with regards to curriculum because we have sessions that separate sessions that we talked about curriculum. So we adopt some of the curriculums from other peers, which really worked for us here in Nigeria. Basically, these are some of the things that we learn, and it's really working for us. And for this task, for this port school, okay, for the task school, sorry, we try using another thing because CTAD has an academy where we teach so many IT skills. So we said that during the call for application for the task school, we said that participants that were able to participate in the school will be given free admission to the CTAD Academy, where they can have other knowledge that will benefit them when they go back to their community. And this approach really motivates the participants to apply, fund themselves, come all the way from their state to Kano State to attend the 5-day school by funding themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Harida. I really appreciate so these points that you bring up of, I mean, firstly, I think you've echoed what others have echoed, which is how it was difficult to source participants to start and different strategies to doing so. I think I also want to highlight your point on adopting the call for applications that were used by other colleagues in other countries. And what is fascinating to me is that there's this coming together of, on the one side, needing to create these programs that are very context-based, very much based on specific needs of communities, while at the same time, there's knowledge sharing of what worked. So a call for applications being one of the examples. And then the ongoing learning that happens as the first cohort or second cohort of different sessions, that there is ongoing learning. And one more point I wanted to, it was a real takeaway for me from this, is the incentive that you use for participants. So CTAD already having an Academy of IT skills, maybe if the community networks course was a new one and it was less known, that perhaps the idea of, building awareness is come and see, this new course and then giving access or tying it back to a more established IT academy. So thank you for that. Before I go to the next question, I want to just remind participants that you're welcome to write your questions on the chat. We will have a final Q&A at the end, but please don't feel shy. This is an interactive session. Share your comments, ideas, and questions. And with that, I want to ask you now to describe for participants in this webinar a little bit about the journey that a student went on in your respective courses. What was the content that you focused on? How was it delivered? By whom? And obviously any highlights or challenges that you could share with us. And could we maybe start with Zenzeleni this time? Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. I'm going to briefly just talk about like the design of the curriculum. It was basically built from scratch by as Nick noted, experts who understood our needs and what we would like to have achieved. The content was based on like a specific or dedicated online learning management system, like for easy access and digital information for all, and also that also works for the type of connectivity that our participants had in the areas, as some of them were struggling with connectivity. So platforms were chosen or learning management systems were chosen that just makes it easier for them. The core elements of what we built the school on, as I think we mentioned this before: personal development, social development, business development, and technical development. And why these? Because they're critical skills, you know, in terms of getting back to a social enterprise ultimately. To add on, we also provided wireless internet service provision course accredited by CETA in partnership with the Vaal University, under the traineeship of Human Capital Learning Solutions. The method of delivery was divided into like 2 parts: online and in-person training, in 3 different locations, with different contexts for 2 weeks. So in February, I think it was 2021, Nick, if I'm not mistaken, we had 2 weeks face-to-face in Cape Town. And then March the same year, it was in Johannesburg. And in May, the team came down to Mankosi, Eastern Cape, to Zenzeleni, for a more practical approach as to what we're doing. We actually have one of our students online, Lizeka, to maybe just highlight some of our learnings or milestones, some of the things that came out of the School of Community Network for Lizeka.
Perhaps in the meantime, I can start off and just give us some extra explanation, and then Lizek, if you want to join, then just jump in, and I'll stop.
Thanks, Nick. I think she's dropped off, but she's good.
Okay. I think Yumna has mentioned some key points here. Is that what we established fairly early on is that the reality of running a CN is challenging, and it's challenging because of the issue of sustainability. And so what we did was we tried to highlight themes that spoke to sustainability. So that's building good community relationships was absolutely key, but also a degree of understanding how how businesses operate and work. The CNs who participated were NGOs and NPOs. But it's hard to run everything on grants. So there's this ability or this need to also look how to make income out of these. And so a large piece of our training also thought about that, how to manage monies, how to create businesses and networks. And I think this is important because we designed an experiential program which moves students around the country to 3 different places, and that was to build their exposure, to what it is like to operate in the rural areas, or what it's like to operate in an urban area. And then we had these kind of comparatives, and then we also had this long period of about half a year or so with students that were then mentored with the skills that they had learned, and they had to manage a grant, which, or like a micro what was it? What was the word? Like a micro loan amount of money that they had, and they had to spend that, and they had to spend it on doing research in their areas and producing deliverables. And I think that's important because the skills that were needed to run the grants, to report on the grants, to understand how to use these towards doing the research, or how to build a tower, or how to expand the CN through marketing. All that was done in this mentorship phase, which took the practical trainings, which had happened for the preceding about 4 to 5 months, and then it was really hands-on. And I think for us, that was a key piece of the puzzle. This mentorship half a year, which really only wrapped up then in January of last year, and which ended with the students presenting to a really a huge audience. This audience of funders, this audience of government officials, this audience of other NGOs, of industry people. And those skills then, the skills to stand up and to present their learnings, or to present their case studies, or to present themselves even, those were also parts of the learning. So the skills that were offered were both hard, but also these soft skills, kind of interpersonal skills that we practiced over and over and over. And I think as part of the experiential modeling, which we made, there was this focus on learning the skills in a formal space, taking those skills out and practicing them, then coming to the group and thinking about those, debriefing those, understanding, becoming comfortable, becoming confident. So I think the training was as much a sort of training for CNs as training for I think essential skills in life. And I think that's we realized by the end of our program that was a kind of the core of it also, that you could in many ways just alter the theme, and you could keep the same things the same, this core of kind of empowerment. Yumna, I don't know if you want to speak to any of those from your perspective, from sort of the operational side of the CN, and now that you've got the 3 students who are actually operating on the ground, that some of them stepped in as brand new members doing the school, and now they're working for the NGO. Do you want to talk to any of that?
Nick, and Yumna, I'm gonna you jumping ahead to my next question about next steps, so I'm going to stop you there. But I also see Lezeka is not online now. Let's keep some time at the end to maybe follow up a little bit more on Lezeka's experience if she makes it back with us. And yes, absolutely, the next steps, you can come in with what happened afterwards. But I want to give the floor over to Harida again, to Sitad, to just describe a little bit, the learner journey from your perspective in the context of your work in Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So from CITAD, we first have, after the call and after the selection, we had a physical phase, which is bringing in the participants together to train them mostly on technical parts of the knowledge of the training, which we bring in people outside CITAD, and we also use our resources from CITAD, which are staff of CITAD, technical from the technical team, to facilitate the trainings, and we invite facilitators from outside CITAD, mostly from the universities and other people that are in the capacity to do so. So after the physical piece of the training, we go for an online training where we have we expand, we expand more on the knowledge that they acquired during the training, and we have we talked about technical aspect of it. We talked about advocacy part of it. And we also talked about resource mobilization and community mobilization. So during the online phase, These are most of the things that we discuss with the participants, because we realize that there is need for us to bring in issues that has to do with giving them knowledge on advocacy, giving them knowledge on resource mobilization, and giving them knowledge on how they can handle their community mobilization. So after the online phase, we we tried, we move on to mentorship phase. The mentorship phase is we bring in us external and we utilize both external and internal mentors to mentor each community that the mentor is closer to, because some of the mentors paid visits to the communities to hold a discussion, and sometimes they meet virtually to hold a discussion on how they can move their community forward on things that they believe they want more knowledge on it. And sometimes these communities will reach out to us to when they have something they want to discuss. So CTAD always go to the community, most especially those communities in Abuja. Our staff from the Abuja office usually make a frequent visits to the communities to talk with them, or know what where they want CTAD to come in and support them with knowledge and all of that. So these are basically some of the things that we do throughout the training phase. And sometimes we learn that these participants have their separate sessions within themselves, because looking at some of the communities are more, the strength of some of the communities is more than the strength of others. So within the communities, when they have something like, for example, community in the ITAS community network, they have more people who are into technical stuff, who are very well equipped with technical knowledge. So a community from Jama people like, yeah, community Jama community network always reach out to ITAS when they need a help with regards to a training, or with regards to something that has to do with technical part of the whole process. As well as communities in Abuja, they always reach out to Fansom for help and for knowledge sharing. So this, apart from CTAD intervention, they also sought intervention from other micros who have more strength than them. So these are basically what happens during the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Harida. Thanks for that. And Rispa, over to you to explain, the learner journey in your case.
Thank you, Sol. Yes, I do agree with the other speakers. And for us, I would say the learner's journey was the most rewarding journey, where you would see the impact that the school had on the different individuals that went through the school. So in terms of the design, I would really say the blended approach was was a success in terms of the model that we took. Blended approach in terms of choosing trainers. So we had trainers from the participants who are the CNs who are going through the training and mentorship, as well as trainers from experts in the field who were already doing something in relation to telecommunication or in relation to community development. Another blended approach was in terms of content, because when you initially, as you were brainstorming, what really helped us was conducting the needs assessment, because otherwise we would have just done community training and network training. But going back to the CNs really brought about issues with sustainability, issues with policy advocacy and the regulation. And here actually was one of our biggest achievement, getting to have even the regulators, the communication authority, coming on board to do some of the trainings to the community networks. So looking at also how do we take or bring on the multi-stakeholder approach, looking at different bodies to also come in and support the work that the training and mentorship program was already conducting. And then the other way that we did that came about in terms of blended approach was the mode of training, where we had started with the online, the webinars. And then just because when we're starting the school, it was around the pandemic, and most of the sessions or like most of the events were happening online. But then there was an outcry from the participants just to have at least one physical meeting to get to know each other, even beyond learning, and also to do some of the concept that they were learning online practically. And this was important because you'd, as you could imagine, some of the concepts like network and infrastructure, very technical, that really needed hands-on and practical work. So we incorporated what we called learning exchange, where community networks representatives would visit other community networks to just understand the ways as a community network in that particular community, as well as their community, their network, the engagement with the community, and then see what lessons they can draw from there, as well as see what gaps they can help that community to build onto whilst they're there. So these learning exchanges took 5 days with the representative from the different community networks. And then we also had the Kenya National School of Community Network, which was also an in-person meeting that now brought both the trainers, the trainees, other supporters of or champions of community networks in this space, as well as just the digital inclusion, digital rights ecosystem, just to hear what's happening, what can CNX mirror, or what can CNX partner with other organizations that are doing, are supporting their communities, not necessarily with the technical bit, but also with different ways. So the Kenya National School also brought about conversations around starting an association of community network, which I can see the chairman is in the meeting. So an association that will bring about issues that faces the community network movement in Kenya, and also just add on to the weight and voice of community network while negotiating, while having conversations with different stakeholders. So that was also a plus. And then lastly, the micro grant, which really now went further into, okay, we've learned this in class. Can we now get small money and see what we can do with that to apply some of the lessons we've learned on ground? So that's what I can say in terms of the design. Thank you.
Thank you, Rispa. I mean, what a richness of experience from the different community networks here. I mean, from South Africa, Kenya, Nigeria. What really strikes me about this journey of the learners is, whilst there was, I mean, Rispa, you mentioned this, the needs assessment and how that helped you to navigate what was necessary to the different sort of baselines that CITAD already had, and the centralization in Abuja about what their mechanisms of training that they leveraged. And with Zenzeleni, this need to move around the country to experience different settings for different community network deployments. Another thing that really strikes is the breadth of content. I think from all three examples, there's a mention around advocacy, certainly the technical elements, and bringing in different expertise, whether it be from practitioners, universities, and from the community in the respective places. But also this mention of softer skills, like Nick said, whether it be community network as a business, the different ideas around resource mobilization, the different kind of liaising with the regulator, which is a very, very different nature of communication than to within communities, perhaps, or within academia, or within the technical community. And so my next question really leads us to what next, and how can we leverage this knowledge that has been curated through these different experiences in the three countries. I wanted to start actually with you, Rispa, around what are the next steps for you? How do we grow this movement in Africa? How do others leverage this learning that you've been sharing here today? Thank you.
Thank you, Sol. I'll share my screen. Yeah, so what next is something that always we had to think about, even while implementing or helping the different, or supporting the different community networks in Kenya. And what the process helped us to create, of course, leveraging on resources that were already existing, such as the Tekio Comunitario Guide, as well as resources such as the Community Network Readiness Toolkit. We were able to create a toolkit, a roadmap of our experience in Kenya on what it took for us to support emerging community networks. And this the ideally is to help anyone, people, organization in communities interested in training themselves or developing a training process on community networks. And maybe just to talk a little bit about the report, or rather the toolkit that we've created, is that it touches on areas such as methodology, where we talked about Harambee approach, participatory action research methodology, and human-centered design. All these approaches are approaches that take into account the strength that comes with creating a model or creating a program with the people, with the community in mind, and with the community at the center. And then we also, it has also a section on modes of delivery, which looks at the needs assessment that we did, training and mentorship, movement building, microgrant. So what we did, and also what are the processes that we would recommend for such a training. And then lastly, it looks at impact in terms of success, recommendation, and testimonials. So what next? For us is, and for the process of the school, is to try to initially was to create a resource of a centralized database, which APC has already done, the repository, but now get as much content about community networks and upload them on that repository that can help community networks now and even future community networks. Also, another thing is in terms of what next is around certification, which came out strongly during the training. So how can we make our trainings formal in a way, because that was one of the requests that came. so looking into striking partnership with private sector, such or the academia, and seeing or institutions such as Afrati, where we can explore ways that can certify and create a sort of sustainability of the training. So in a nutshell, I think most of the recommendations here had already talked about while I was talking about the design. So yes, that is what we're looking for, as well as you can find more about our resources. Also, we produce podcasts about getting testimonials from some of the participants and their journey as participants of the school. Thank you, and back to you. So,
thank you, Rispa. So exciting to hear about this, and just a reminder to share any link that you have to these resources on the chat for the participants. I want to go now to Zenzeleni, just to share a little bit about the next steps. I know I cut you off and you were starting to tell your journey, so please go ahead. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Sol. Yumna has asked me to start on this one, and then she'll follow. I think when thinking about impacts on the next steps, I think it's complicated. I think there were some amazing wins for our school. For example, some of the students who were trained have stepped into jobs and have stepped into CNs. Where before they might have been volunteering, before they may have just been interested, before they may have been kind of part-time employed, they're now full-time employed, or they've also been promoted. And I think that's a huge win on the one hand. But as Yumna mentioned earlier, we have such a high unemployment rate. I think the expanded version at the moment of the unemployment rate is about 46%, which puts huge amounts of pressure on students and staff to think about innovative ways to solve that through the school, right? So I think this was an important learning from us, is that the need for material employment is so high that people don't have the ability to stay as volunteers or just put their time in for free. There's a need to take something out of that. That was something that we predicted at the beginning of the course, but we didn't realize just how important that would be at the end of the course. So some of our students have moved into other things. Some of our students, one student at the moment is acting as a coder to code an app for a partnership between Zenzeleni and another NGO. Other students have moved into other fields and aren't involved in this anymore. But I think what was an interesting piece was that we didn't produce an output like a roadmap. We didn't produce something that we could pass over. What we produced, however, was a community of people who still largely stay in touch. Not everybody, but many people are staying in touch. I think what it resulted in is the fomenting and the growing of the relationships and trust between various community networks and other people who are interested too. So two of the community networks who hadn't been involved with each other before are now working with each other a lot. And it's resulted in financial flows between the one and the other. I think that's really important. And so it's created this sort of environment, which I see as the first step for expansion, right? And I think that's important because when you're creating a movement, you first have to build a first layer. You have to build unity, you have to build trust, and then you can build on that. Importantly, I think, and this I think, Yumna, hopefully you can speak to this, there have been some material outputs. The one of those is an app that's Zenzeleni is building, and it's an app that I think might be useful for this particular discussion, and you can expand on that, Yumna. But I think the one thing that we keep on thinking is and what next for us. The government has shown interest to expand the training to kind of to use the training that we developed. Hi, sorry, I was muted. Yeah, I don't know how far you got before I was muted.
Just the last part.
Okay, so
yeah, you were talking about the app and yeah,
yeah.
and I don't know if
the
you
government
want to come in.
I'll just
Yes,
expand
yes,
one more
go
thing.
on.
So the Northern Cape government, one of the provincial governments, has shown interest in expanding the program, specifically in their province up in the Northern Cape. So they seem keen to take the model and start training communities with it. It's a challenge because with everything, you know, there's the kind of the idea and then the implementation and how that works. But I think what the school did was it kind of put down a foundation from which to build, and that building still is in the process of happening and still has to happen. And Yumna, I think this is a good point to talk about that app maybe.
Thanks, Nick. I think you covered basically everything. In terms of just briefly, I know I have 2 minutes after the project closed, or our event that we had in Johannesburg. There was a lot of interactions between the schools. The students just like to see where we're going to, where they want to go to, some mentorship, but that sort of like faded out because everybody had their own things to do, like within a few months. Some faded, some moved into spaces, as Nick said. Then Delaney, so obviously a project, the environmental sustainability project. One of the groups that we joined was the transformative tech, and sort of how it tied in was the, so we've actually got Black Equations, which is an app developer from Black Equations, which was one of our participants at the school, and the Amadiba team and the Zendeleni team coming together and creating an app that focuses on daily activities or environmental practices in the village or in the villages of Amadiba and Mankosi. The app we're currently in the process of finalizing the app, but it's not, it's the core function of the app is to have an interactive, a very easy, simple app for the youth to use on how to do food gardening, sustainable fishing, even livestock management, and checking out the herbal, traditional herbs and plants, and also type of skills development, basic skills development that you can use via your app, like certain types of computer training, etc. So it's basically a resource toolkit, and it was designed between Zenzeleni, the Amadiba team, who are in environmental sustainability, and Rodwell from the school from the Black Equations network, as an app developer. And as we move forward, we want to add more features on apps specifically for, you know, if all goes well, each community network can basically, I would say, advertise the community network, voucher sales, basically market via the app. So I'm going to stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Yumna. Very exciting, and I think we would need a whole nother session to understand further all the branching out and amazing work that each of these community networks are doing. But we're getting towards the end of our session, and I want to give Harira a chance to just comment on next steps, specifically on how to leverage the knowledge that has been learned through these training programs and to growing the movement, I mean, in your case in Nigeria, but also more broadly in the continent. Also, Harira, just maybe if you could address the question in the chat as well, which is specifically for you, that would be great. Over to you, Harira. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So going forward, what we have in our recommendation is bringing in more collaboration. So we have this collaborative approach that we are planning to use during the hot school, where we have bring in more organizations, regulators to come in, to have a kind of collaboration with them. So which we are also planning that along the process during the school, we can have some major key stakeholders or key partners that we see as that are interesting partners to come in. Well, maybe we can give them a slot to hold a session where they can bring in new knowledge to the participant during the training, as well as during like we have these documents that was developed by the SICA team, whereby the document is being shared with the micros, so that it will keep on they will keep on having like this sort of support while doing interventions in their communities. So the document is talking about community networks, the role and responsibilities of communities, how they can build, manage, and sustain the community networks, and other interesting parts that will really benefit the micros. And people outside the micros, community outside the micros can also adopt the model using that same document that we have on ground. And there is another thing that we do, to simplify and make the knowledge for all, we translated one of our documents into local language, whereby everybody can have access to the knowledge, because we understand that there is gap when it comes to in the rural part when it comes to Western education. So we try to we simplify the knowledge by translating it into local language, where people can have access to the knowledge. And we also translated some key words, technical words, into local language also, with support from the department in the university that help us to translate it. We have a collaboration with them. They help us and translate it where we take it back to the community. So when it comes to the issue of technical terms, it's being translated, and the community, it's being simplified to the community, so that they will not encounter challenges while trying to do their engagement within their communities. For the questions, I'll go through the question, then I can answer the question. Thank you.
Would you like me to read it to you, or can you see it? It's from John. So the question is, Harida, do you find it?
Please read out the question for me.
Yeah, you mentioned receiving, so I think this is pertaining to earlier questions, but you mentioned receiving support requests encompassing both technical assistance and knowledge transfer. Were you adequately equipped with existing internal resources to meet these support needs, especially the technical ones? He says, I'm eager to understand your strategy in dealing with the part of learning and knowledge transfer.
Yes, for that we use internal resources, but there are topics that we also we believe that we need the services of other partners, whereby we have an existing collaboration with some of the network service providers in Nigeria, and we have their staff come in during the training to hold a session, a technical session with our participants. So most of the resources we use are our own resources. We use our internal resources, but sometimes we do source for external resources. And before we source for that external resources, we go into collaboration with those stakeholders to see that, so that when we need them, they will not see it as something new. So we have a kind of a very good collaboration with them, and their door is always open for us whenever we have something that we're seeking for their resources. So most of our resources are internal resources, but sometimes we do go out for external resources.
Thank you, Harida. Thank you for covering that too. And as we come towards the end of our session in a few minutes, I wanted to just invite people to either type your question on the chat or raise your hand. And we'll have to make it brief, but hopefully you can have all your questions answered. I don't see any hands up for now. I wanted to just reflect while we see if any questions come up, reflect on just the breadth of what's been shared here today. Harira, just your last point on translating the content, again, showing from one side this breadth of participation with different stakeholders that you mentioned, but also the need to adapt to different realities in different communities. And also to highlight some of the successes in terms of where to next and taking this knowledge forward, growing it. I think some of the successes that really stood out for me are, I mean, both in terms of contents and tools. So we have, I think, Harira from CETAD mentioned guidelines that can be used, as we said now, in different languages. The toolkit from Tandanet, the app from Zenzeleni, all holding or leveraging this incredible experience through the community network schools. But also they spoke about different communities of people that have been built, more formalized in the case of Kenya with the Association of Community Networks. But it seems to be that through this collaboration of many, many different organizations, both with technical knowledge, but also with community development knowledge, the awareness of the role that community networks have to play to provide meaningful and affordable access really has been heightened. The awareness and support from different stakeholders. And I really applaud all three community networks that have presented today for their work and in that. I don't see any further questions or hands up. I did want to mention some exciting news. I think it was mentioned by a few speakers, the Tequio Comunitario. So the learnings from a formalized program across Latin America, developed by Rhizomatica, I believe, and the learnings that are beyond, not just from community to community. I think some of our colleagues mentioned this, the richness of experience through peer-to-peer exchanges from different community networks, also different community networks working together after this training together. But also the learnings across countries. So we have here Nigeria, South Africa, and Kenya, but also continents. So from Latin America and Africa, learning from each other. And I believe that APC and Rhizomatica are searching to generate a hybrid regional program based on those experiences from Latin America, as well as the ones learned in Africa, and have begun the process of participatory creation of a program and looking for allies. So any allies on the call, please watch this space. And with that, I would like to leave the last minute for any of our participants, if they have one point that they think that was a real treasure to take away for knowledge transfer. One sentence from each of you as we close the session. I know it's tricky sometimes, but I want to start with Rispa in this one. A last takeaway of what the experience was of knowledge transfers, and creating of knowledge and sharing of knowledge and creating of community. Rispa, one sentence.
Thank you, Sol. My one sentence is that I leave this meeting today I leave this meeting today reinforced that the capacity building for community networks that is very community-centric. It takes a while to see the impact, but it definitely has impact for the community networks movement. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And Nick or Yumna, one of you, please, one sentence. And then to Harira, and we close.
Okay, I'll go ahead. Just when I chatted about this the other day, and we were talking about why we do this. Sometimes we also don't know because it's a bit crazy. But I think the impact. So at the end of all the madness, the impact, and it's to see the small things that happen. So I take that like from what everybody's saying today. There were milestones, there were this, there were that. So it does. It's actually worth all the madness. Good madness, yeah. That's my
Thank you. And Harira, your last words. And as you join, just please note to participants that there's 3 more sessions happening on Wednesdays in the next 3 coming weeks, and the topics are on the chat. Harira, your words of goodbye, please.
Thank you. Let me open my video while saying this. So my words of goodbye today is as while doing this webinar, I begin to believe that it's very important to share knowledge, and it is through knowledge sharing and learning sharing that you begin to believe that yes, you are making a huge impact in your community. So more more collaboration, more knowledge sharing, we really get to where we want to. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Bye.
Perfect ending. Thank you, everybody. Have a lovely rest of your day, and please join the next sessions in the series. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.